I'm Jason Wright, and this is the Texas Titans Podcast. Just like the name of the podcast suggests, I will be visiting with Texas Titans of business, academia, sports, or whatever their chosen field, looking for the disciplines and habits that have made these Texans so remarkable. Success leaves clues, and I want to crack the code to these Titans' success and share it with you. Thank you for joining me here on the Texas Titans Podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Texas Titans Podcast. Today is one of my favorites. I had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Robin L. Pinkley, PhD, who is a foremost expert on the art of negotiation. She has a specialized consulting practice that actually large organizations hire Dr. Pinkley to help negotiate large pay packages. She helps individuals understand how to negotiate better salaries for themselves and anything in regard to the practice of negotiation. She is an expert that is sought out nationwide. She's also a professor at Southern Methodist University where she teaches some of these tactics. And I'm going to get into her professional bio a little bit here. Dr. Pinkley is an endowed professor of management and organizations at the Edwin L. Cox School of Business at Southern Methodist University and past chairman of the Organizational Behavior Department and director of the American Airlines Center for Labor Relations and Conflict Resolution. Dr. Pinkley is the founder of the M2M Master to Master Center for Profitable Negotiation, focusing on negotiation, research, training, consulting, and deal-making. She previously served as a visiting professor of organizational behavior at the J.L. Kellogg Graduate School of Management at Northwestern University. Dr. Pinkley received a Ph.D. in social psychology from the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Dr. Pinkley has been a frequent speaker in management development programs and a negotiation consultant for corporate and government organizations in 9 countries. A sample of her clients include Accenture, Allstate Insurance, Arco, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas and Florida, DFB Holding Company, Devon, DPT Laboratories, Freeman, General Electric, Generational Equity, Jones Lang LaSalle, JP Morgan Chase, Kodak, Legacy Bank, Lockheed Martin, Vought, Macy's, Maxim Integrated Products, Mobile, NASA, Physicians Leadership Association of America, Pioneer Natural Resources. The list goes on and on. She is very sought after, like I said. A subset of Dr. Pinkley's media coverage includes interviews on CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, Marketplace Radio, NPR, quotes in newspapers such as the Wall Street Journal, maybe you've heard of it, New York Times, Chicago Tribune, Washington Post, Dallas Morning News, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, USA Today, and quotes in magazines such as U.S. News & World Report, Money Magazine, Monster.com, Fortune Magazine, Kiplinger's Personal Finance Magazine, Red Book, Working Mother, Woman's Day, Ladies Home Journal, and D Magazine. So see, whenever Robin speaks, lots and lots of people not only listen, but they write down what she has to say, for good reason. Dr. Pinkley was the president of the International Association of Conflict Management. She served as a chairman of the Conflict Management Division of the Academy of Management, as well as member-at-large and program chair. She was also an associate editor of the International Journal of Conflict Management. Dr. Pinkley is co-author, along with Greg Northcraft, of Get Paid What You're Worth, the Expert Negotiator's Guide to Salary and Compensation. She is also the author or co-author of articles on negotiation and managerial conflict resolution, which appear in the Academy of Management Journal, Academy of Management Review, Organizational Behavior, and Human Decision Processes. Journal of Applied Psychology, Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology, and the International Journal of Conflict Management. Dr. Pinkley is the creator of the gain-gain approach to profitable negotiation. And we're going to get into a little bit of what gain-gain actually is. Her research focuses on the sources and consequences of negotiator power, the use of strategic bidding strategies, and the strategic application of value context theory. This research has earned Dr. Pinkley the Edwin L. Cox 1994 Outstanding Researcher Award, a Frank and Susan Delvaney Faculty Research Fellowship, a Corrigan Fellowship, a Dorothy Cullum Fellowship, and a Marilyn and Leo F. Corrigan Jr. Faculty Endowment. She is also the recipient of the Southern Methodist University's Golden Mustang Award for Innovative Teaching and the Carl Sewell Distinguished Service to the Community Award. Whew, wow, that wears me out just saying it. And the thing is, too, but in addition to all of that, she's also just one cool lady who I love spending time with. I had so much fun getting to catch up with my former professor and my present friend, and now yours and my Texas Titan guest. I think you're going to really enjoy this. So please enjoy listening to the conversation between myself and this week's Texas Titan, Dr. Robin Pinkley. Thanks for listening. Hey folks, I just wanted to ask you once again to go out to jasonwrightnow.com and download a free copy of my book, Push Play, Taking Your Life Off Pause. It was my first book that talks about my escape from corporate America and into the world of entrepreneurship. And it's where I first explored life design and life curation. I think you'll enjoy that. I have a follow-up to the book coming out hopefully this fall. I'm working with my editor on that. So please be looking for that. And also I have my blog there, Make Your Own Rules. And I had some good feedback from including an installment of the Make Your Own Rules blog on the last episode of the Texas Titans podcast. So I thought I would include another one. This was rule number 8. And the rule is this: just walk away. The rule maker was me, Jason Wright, after many thrown weed whackers, IKEA furniture, and other uncooperative objects put on this earth to destroy my happiness. You can learn more about the rule from Frank Costanza. If you check out the episode of Seinfeld, I think the title is Serenity Now, you'll learn all you need to know about the whole walk away approach. So here we go. This is diving into the just walk away rule. I'm so frustrated right now. Literally, I'm ready to throw my MacBook across the room. Why am I even trying to get these audio files off my H6 recorder for my podcast? No one is going to listen to my podcast. However, I did the interviews, so I owe it to my guest to actually go through with it. I've told several people I'm starting a podcast. I have to follow through, but no one's going to listen. Why can't I be thinner? Why don't I make more money? Why does Ryan Reynolds never respond to my DMs on Insta? I can't stand my stupid car. I should have been a lawyer. And the spiral continues. Finally, in what might be the last sliver of sanity for the moment, I get up and I walk away. Within 2 minutes, the spiral starts to slow. It's Saturday. I'm able to spend all day with my beloved wife at her store, Hot Tots. I don't have to have the files moved right this minute. In fact, I'm under no deadline. It's not like any of you are out there saying, man, where is that podcast Jason Wright should be starting? That's what I want. I want a podcast from Jason Wright, and I want it now. If you are, you're just weird. I love you for it, but you're out there. Have you ever noticed that a seemingly hangnail problem can quickly spiral into a near meltdown? One little frustration immediately causes a flood of every bad decision we've ever made. Self-doubt comes marching in. All of a sudden, life has taken a dark, catastrophic turn. I hate moments like this. I'm terrible in these moments. I've learned the single best way to deal with them is to force myself to simply walk away for a moment. My daughters like to tell the story of looking out the window into our backyard when they were much younger. It was a picturesque scene, complete with tall oleander, plush green St. Augustine grass, a large pine tree, birds fluttering about, and then across the window, a flat spinning weed whacker finding its way into the fence. Dad was working on the lawn tools again. We Wrights have a nasty habit of taking out our frustration on uncooperative mechanical devices. Now that I'm a little older, I realize sometimes when you're losing the battle for sanity, the best thing to do is just get up and walk away. Take a deep breath. It brings everything into perspective. I've tried the Frank Costanza mantra of just chanting Serenity Now. However, serenity never comes, and like Lloyd Braun so astutely noted, eventually it all builds up and you explode. If you don't get the Seinfeld reference, it means you're most likely too young. If that's the case, here's a virtual bear hug. Thank you for reading this old dude's blog, youngster. Don't throw a weed whacker. Don't throw a MacBook. Instead, make a rule to just walk away. If an argument is brewing, walk away for a moment. catch your breath, look at the issue from a higher position. You'll be glad you did. Oh, and it turns out I just had the wrong USB cable. When I got home, the files were transferred inside of 5 minutes. Stay tuned for the podcast. Thanks for reading. You rule. Please go out to jasonwrightnow.com and look at all the installments of the Make Your Own Rules blog. I would be so grateful as you did. And again, download a free copy of Push Play, Taking Your Life Off Pause, and be looking this fall for my next book. Thanks, guys. Dr. Robin Pinkley, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for doing this interview. I really appreciate it. It's not even an interview. I hate calling it an interview. It's a conversation.
It
right?
is.
It is. So,
and we've had many before.
We
so
have
this
had
is fun.
many. Exactly. But I guarantee I'm just glad that I don't have to negotiate with you, that you've already agreed.
You already did, and you won.
I won.
I'm here.
So I'm not going to sell. I'm going to keep selling after the sale. I got you here. We're talking, so thank you so much. All right. Well, like we just talked about, the purpose of this conversation is to, one, get to know you better. But first of all, I mean, you've been successful in academia. You're a PhD. You're an entrepreneur. You're a writer. You're an advisor. I mean, there's so many layers to get into with you. It's almost hard to know exactly where to start. So what I'd like to do is just kind of take me back to the beginning, the early stages of your career, and how you became what literally, I mean, you are one of the most sought after negotiation experts in the country, which is such an incredibly critical topic for anyone. I mean, for couples, we talked a little bit about that, for relationships and marriage, for negotiating your paycheck, for negotiating contracts. It's such a big topic. So kind of take us back to the early stages of the career, and then let's just kind of see where that meanders and kind of peel back the onion as it goes.
Well, I think that's a harder question than you even realize because, there was a really wise mentor I had years ago who once told me that those people who are successful are those who recognize opportunities when they see them. And I think that's very, very true. People so often ask me, how did you end up doing what you're doing? And I've never really been able to tell them, to be perfectly honest. I think some of it comes from the fact that I was the middle of three sisters, to be perfectly frank. I was, and you have daughters yourself, so you know how complicated women can be. And so I honestly think being the middle of three daughters, we were raised to be highly independent individuals, and we were all completely different. And I think having to transverse that series of relationships with two sisters who I loved dearly, but who were all very assertive. I mean, one of my sisters pushed me out of a tree when I was a kid, and broke my arm, and I was equally feisty. So we weren't your average, wallflowers, if I can put it that way. I think I, from a very early age, learned lots of things. One was my mother taught me that it was better to assert yourself, and particularly in situations that you cared about. Pick your battles, but assert yourself in situations that you really cared about was more important than sitting on the sidelines and being quiet.
Right.
And she raised us all to feel that way. And when you all feel that way, you have to find your place. And so I think I learned not only to be a negotiator, but to be a mediator and someone who could cohesively find a way to communicate effectively and also make it so it worked for all of us.
Right.
So honestly, that's, I think, the way I started. Then I went into psychology, and psychology is the study of human interaction. And to be perfectly honest, I would never in a million years have predicted that I would end up in a business school.
Really?
And the way that happened was I got very interested in conflict resolution with my dissertation, and no one in the PhD program, none of my faculty knew a thing about it. So I ended up going, my PhD's from UNC Chapel Hill.
Okay.
I ended up going to Duke, where there was a faculty member there, Blair Shepard, in the business school, who studied conflict resolution. And he ended up being on my dissertation and got very interested in my work. and suggested I go get a postdoc, and postdocs were very new in that time, at the Kellogg Graduate School of Management, which I did. And they were actually paying more for the postdoc than any of the offers I got in psych departments for actually faculty positions, if you can believe it.
Really?
And I went there, and the whole focus there was on negotiation, and it changed my life. It was like a duck to water. It was like I had found my place in the world. I don't know what it is about negotiation. I think it's because, from my perspective, negotiation is a philosophy of interpersonal exchange.
Right.
Meaning it is the study of and the practice of interacting with others in a way that is effective in every aspect of what we do in life.
Right.
Meaning it is the way we do everything, whether it is deciding on what movie you're going to, whether it is putting your child to bed on time, whether it is getting your teenage child to come home with the car on time, whether it is selling your company, whether it is getting your parent to give up their car and move into a retirement community, whether it is sales, regardless of what we're doing, it is the study of influence and working effectively with others. And it has been the joy of my life. And so I study it and practice it in everything that I do.
What was it initially about the conflict resolution that drew you? Was it seeing that there's a conflict exists and then the two parties leave the table amiable, or not two parties, but multiple, whatever the case may be? What was it that excited you about that interpersonal exchange to begin with that then led to the negotiation? What were you seeing that was fascinating you?
Well, it's interesting. I think I learned this in psychology. The interesting thing about psychology is I think people are drawn to things that they don't necessarily understand or do well. And there was an awful lot of conflict in my family.
Yeah.
And there was, at the time, because my sisters and I were so different, there was an awful lot of conflict between us. And I think I wanted to understand it. And what I was drawn to in conflict was the fact that two people could experience the exact same situation and walk away not just disagreeing about the facts, but disagreeing about which facts were even relevant. And that's what my dissertation was about. It was about the fact that people had different frames and saw the conflict as being about very different things. That's what my dissertation was about. But I quickly, in all honesty, moved away from an interest in conflict resolution to a focus on negotiation, because for me, negotiation is a recognition that conflict is an okay thing. Conflict is not necessarily a negative. Conflict is a necessary component of the way we live.
Right.
The question is, how does one deal with conflict? And how does one learn from conflict?
Yeah.
And today, anybody who knows me would tell you, I have no aversion to conflict whatsoever.
Right.
None. Most people in this world have much more of an aversion to it than I do. It just doesn't affect me. I don't see it as a negative. I see it as something to be either resolved or dealt with, or most situations that involve conflict, a lot of what's happening is, if you stop and recognize it, what's coming from the other person is about them. It's not really about you.
Right.
So if you stop and listen and stop being triggered by it and hear what's happening with the other person, there's an awful lot you can do to deal with it.
So, and that's what I was going to get to when you said something there, that it's about them. So do you think that a lot of that has to do with whenever conflict arises, the individual feels an attack?
Yes.
Because obviously there's a disagreement on a subject, like where to eat, where to what day we should get married, whether we should get married at all.
Yeah.
So it's a personal attack. I feel one way, you don't agree, so therefore I have to kind of dig in. So when you're advising people on how to remove, in some way, I guess, remove themselves from the situation, how do you do it? What do you do to get them out of that?
Well, there's a classic book called Getting to Yes that's a very good introductory. I'd say it's an introductory book in negotiation. And one of the primary tenets in that book is separating the people from the problem. And that corresponds with the only self-help book I ever recommend to anybody. It's called The Four Agreements. And in that book, there are 4 tenets, and I'm just going to talk about one. And in that book, it says, don't take things personally. And it is something I've learned to live by. The argument there is to really, truly recognize that we are all unique individual human beings, and much of what's going on with us is about us. And therefore, instead of internalizing what is happening when somebody is reacting, to stop and take a breath and hear what's being said and understand, just like I found in my dissertation, that they're reacting to what their experience has been. And if you could stop and hear that and think about and even address and empathize with what's going on, then you can get to what your own experience has been. But you can't get to that until you've dealt with what they're experiencing and how they're feeling. Now, having said that, I also go beyond that when I talk about negotiation with my students or my customers, and I say, but if you forget the people, they become the problem. Meaning that same thing. You have to acknowledge and understand and hear what the other person is saying before you can get to your own issues, or all you're dealing with are those issues the other person is having.
Right.
And that becomes a huge boundary and a huge hurdle that just adds problems to the negotiation.
Right.
And you're not going to get to the things you're trying to accomplish. So, separating them from the issues is certainly valuable and important, meaning you can, be hard on the issues but not the people. But if you forget the emotional component of negotiation, which is a true, honest component, people get emotional, they get their feelings hurt. And this is true not just in a negotiation, but in human interaction. You can't get anywhere. You have to deal with the substance of those things before you can move on to the substance of the issue.
Right.
So, and that's hard in human interaction, because we ourselves get triggered because we have an emotional response to the emotions of others.
Right.
So if you can get yourself to stop and think, what's happening with that person? Can I hear them? Can I acknowledge it? Can I separate the fact that they are feeling something and hurt and address that hurt independent of my own? You get much farther in the interactions you have with others.
Yeah.
It's hard to do, though. You have to train yourself to do it.
Yeah. All right. So you finish up at Kellogg. So then what? Where do you? So you figured out that this is what you love to do.
Right.
You're in your element.
Yep.
It's your wheelhouse. And where do you start getting paid to practice your craft? Do you go to the classroom initially?
Yes.
What happened?
So I then went on the market, and I actually got interviews at lots of places: Harvard, USC, it's NYU, SMU, etc. I was in a dual career situation. We decided together the best place for us together was Dallas, because there were more opportunities for my spouse. So we came to SMU. It's ended up being an amazingly positive environment for me.
It's worked out really well for me. So I'm glad
me
that
too.
happened.
I love living in Dallas, and it has been a great place for my kids as well. So came to SMU, started as, and have continued to be, and my primary job is an academic. So I am a chaired professor in the Cox School of Business, where I teach our MBAs and our executive MBAs, and that has been a remarkable experience, and where I also do extensive research focused on one topic and one topic only, and that's negotiation. There are lots of people who are good at lots of things. I'm a one-trick pony. Negotiation is everything else is a hobby. Negotiation is the only thing I know tons about, and probably because I'm so obsessive about it. So I've done extensive research in negotiation and focused on it. So started out teaching and doing research. Quite quickly, I also had the opportunity, and this is something rare for junior faculty. We typically steer our junior faculty away from doing training and consulting, but I had the opportunity to do it and learn quickly that if you were applying what you learned from your research and from your teaching, that it actually fed your research and your teaching. So I started to do training with corporations worldwide, and not consulting, but training, where I was going into companies and training them based on the research that was done by my worldwide colleagues and my own research and what I was learning from observing my own students in the classroom. And it was remarkable what I learned. When you get the opportunity to work with world-class negotiators and you observe what they're doing and you observe what they're doing that corresponds with what you believe to be true and what they're doing that is not consistent with what you believe to be true, it feeds your research in ways you could not have learned otherwise.
Right.
So, in all honesty, one of the things I'm known for is most of my research is very counterintuitive, meaning it is not consistent with what we know in the field because I've learned so much from the master negotiators that I've had the opportunity to work with worldwide. Over time, as I became more senior and as I became known in not just my academic arena, but also, through the business world and the government world worldwide, I had the opportunity to do more and more consulting. Consulting meaning I had the opportunity to go in and help companies do their deals that they do.
Right.
That was amazingly informative because it helped me to help them undo the damage they did in some of the early parts of the deals they did, as well as craft from day one some of the deals that they were doing.
Now, what were some of the mistakes that you would see on the front end that they would have to
Oh my gosh,
kind of back themselves out of?
so many things. So it has fed my knowledge about negotiation in a way that has completely educated me about how simplified our approach to negotiation has been. Meaning, first of all, negotiation is not something that occurs out of context. Negotiation occurs within context, meaning to really have an effective negotiation strategy, you must understand the market in which the deal is being done. You have to understand, first and foremost, who your company is, how your company is perceived, what products and services you are presenting in the market, how they compare to all your competitors, how they're perceived by your customers, how your vendors are informing and provide and are the extent to which they're needed by you to feed your products and services. You need to understand your value propositions. You need to understand whether those value propositions are commodities or can be differentiated. You need to understand whether parts of your products and services are commodities or can be differentiated. You need to understand how to do pricing in terms of that. You need to understand the extent to which every single person who interfaces in the marketplace can articulate your value proposition and consistently says those things to the marketplace and consistently uses the same strategy, because everybody who interfaces with the marketplace tells the marketplace what you will and will not do.
Right.
You need to understand whether or not where you're going in the marketplace is the right place to go or not. So I've helped numerous customers shift strategically the direction in which they took their products and services and shift even the market in which they pursued them. So you need to know how you're compensating, for example, your sales force, and whether you're compensating your sales force in a way that consistently brings back the kind of deals you want them to or not.
Right.
So it is a huge, comprehensive system that really allows you to do the deals that are going to make you profitable and is going to perpetuate the efficiency, the effectiveness, the profitability of what it is you're trying to do in the marketplace.
Right.
So I today view myself as much as a strategist, as a negotiation expert, because all of those things are involved if you're really going to be effective in your ability to help companies negotiate.
Well, and it sounds to me like, okay, so, and forgive me, either I recently read or I heard or I was actually speaking to someone. I do a lot of all three. And so I
Yes,
can't
we
remember.
know you do.
So I can't exactly remember, but you just confirmed something that was said or I heard or read, that when asked, it was a description of a manager being asked the question by an associate. So let's just say it was a sales manager being asked by a salesperson, how would you, manager, handle this situation? And the manager replies, well, or do you want to know how I would do it? Or do you want me to tell you how you should do it? Because it's so important that the gifts are different, right?
Exactly.
And so it sounds to me like that's what you're saying, is that if you're going to go to the negotiating table, whether you are a company bringing products and services to market or you're the individual, you have to, it's that know thyself first. Know the position from which you're negotiating inside and out. And then, and only then, can you truly effectively, control might be a bad word, but enter with your full toolkit in hand. Is that, because it sounds like kind of the same principle?
Well, let me add to it a little bit. So the true model and knowledge for negotiation, if you really get it, is the same across all circumstances. However, the application of it is different because your circumstance is different. The extent to which, where you are in your market, where you entered in your market, whether you're first entrant or a late entrant, the extent to which you can differentiate or not, the extent to which you have power in that marketplace, the extent to which you have numerous vendors or only one potential vendor, the extent to which you have numerous customers or you only have one primary customer you rely on, all those things, whether you can differentiate or not, whether, the level at which you have competition, how good your sales force is, and the extent to which they truly understand your value proposition. And let me tell you, that is a huge problem that I see. The extent to which you truly do understand the level of power you have in the negotiation, and that's another huge problem I see in the companies I work for. All of those things determine how effectively you're going to use, first of all, how effectively you're going to create a strategy, and then secondly, how effectively you're going to use a strategy. So if what you're saying is what that person was saying is your circumstance is different than mine, and therefore how you're going to take this model and apply it needs to differ, I agree. If you're saying, okay, you're a different person than me, and therefore you're going to have to use it very differently, I disagree a little bit. Okay, yes, I agree that human beings are different and that we all have different skills. It's kind of like teachers. For example, one of the things we know is new junior professors will come in and they'll say, can I sit down in your class? And we're always willing to share in any way we can. And we have them come and sit in our class. One of the mistakes they make is they tend to try to copy the way we teach. They can use the same content, but they're different human beings and with a different style. And when they try to do it our way, they fail because they're not the same person. They need to use their strengths. If they're a humorous person, they should use humor. If they're a serious person, they have to be who they are. They can't pretend to be who we are, right? They have to use their own. The more people are authentic, the better. And the same thing is true in negotiation. You have to be authentic to who you are. I tell my students that. I say, I'm going to model stuff, but now you have to use who you are strategically and do it yourself. Okay, that doesn't mean there aren't ways to negotiate. It just means you have to authentically apply it to who you are, okay, and your circumstance.
Right.
So both of those things are true.
Right.
Okay, but it doesn't mean there aren't true models. As we're getting better and better and better at understanding these things, there is a real science behind it.
Well, so that brings up the point or a question. Who do you see are the best negotiators, because I've watched. I mean, and culturally, it's a very different as you go. There's some negotiators that from different cultures that are just. It's just no, it's just very, very rigid, very harsh. And there's bullies. There are some that are very kind and sweet, and before you know it, you've lost, but you almost enjoy doing it. I find myself to often not be a good negotiator because I'm so interested in not feeling like I've taken advantage of the other person.
That is problematic.
Yes,
as you learned in my class, that is problematic.
I'm a very empathetic negotiator, and that has always been a problem for me.
Yeah.
So, what does the kind of, if this is even possible to say, if there is a category of what makes that negotiator that just really is, 9 times out of 10, they're going to come out either with what they want or a little more.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I think today. And the reason I'm going to tell you what I think today is because this is a true science, but it is not a perfect science, right? If it was a perfect science, I'd be bored and doing something else.
Yeah.
Because I need to continually learn and grow. And, and I tell all of my customers, okay, guys, this is what I'm going to tell you today. And I hate to tell you this, but some of the things I'm going to tell you today, it's different than what I told my customers 5 years ago. Oops, sorry about that. Sure. But this is the reality of a evolving science. Right. And so what I'm going to tell you today, based on all the research that I'm doing and the research of my colleagues, and particularly some of the research I'm currently doing myself, is I believe the best negotiators in the world, and this is and they're going to have to shift the degree to which they express the components of this contingent on with whom they're negotiating, are what I'm going to call androgynous. Now, androgynous means the best of the stereotypical male and the best of the stereotypical female characteristics. Okay. So the best of the stereotypical male, and I'm saying stereotypical, you get, male characteristics are what we call agentic, meaning assertive, direct, straightforward, and a willingness to recognize that one deserves, has a right to, and should pursue their own objectives. Okay. So I always tell, again, my students and my customers, in negotiation, there is a goal. You have something you're trying to achieve. Why would you be in a negotiation if you weren't trying to achieve and gain something? Right. And you should keep your eye on that, meaning your eye on your side of the playing field. And you want to think about it in terms of tracking your bottom line, the least you're willing to take, but not just focusing on your bottom line, but also having a higher, more difficult goal, what we call a target. And the only thing you should be tracking is not how well the other side is doing, because you don't really know, and it's irrelevant, right, but how well you're doing. And tracking, therefore, how far above your bottom line and how close to your target you're getting. And anything above your bottom line is success, but you want to try to be as successful as possible. So you want to try to get and pursue, right, and continue to pursue to try to get closer to your target. That's how you track, and that's agentic. A right to, an assertiveness towards, and a focus on your own side of the playing field and trying to gain as much as possible. Now, but the other side is the stereotypical female side. And that is keeping your ear on the other side of the field. Right. That is using the interpersonal acumen and ability to connect with the other party, to understand what the other party is trying to achieve, and hear the other party and connect. Like, for example, there's some things I can do as a woman that you probably can't. I can't do this in every culture. I certainly do it in this culture. So I use touch, for example. I'm doing a lot of work on charm and negotiation. And let me tell you, charm, authentic charm, is highly effective for men and women in not just negotiation circumstances, but in corporate circumstances. Not flirtation, right, but having the other person feel good about themselves, okay? So that means having them feel heard, I'm going to do work to give to them, but in order to get, not just to give. So that is hearing them, having them felt heard, trying to understand what they're after, connecting with them on an interpersonal level, and trying to figure out ways to help them pursue what they're after. But the agentic part is the reason for it is to get what I'm after. So my ear is on their side of the playing field, but my eye is on my side. The purpose is to increase my ability to get what I'm after.
Right.
So the best negotiators are those who use strategies for connecting with the other side and giving them value, okay? But for the purpose, the agentic side, of claiming value, okay? Strategies to give, but for the purpose of getting.
Right. Right.
Those are the most effective negotiators.
Right. Right. So now one of the things you mentioned there is, and I've heard some studies from some clinical psychologists that will say one of the reasons, like I know that you do a lot of compensation negotiation for, large, executives that are negotiating very, seven-figure packages at times. And when it comes to the issue of pay gap between males and females, there's factors that attest to that, but let's just say all things being equal, CEO, female CEO, male CEO.
Yeah.
I've read studies that basically say women are naturally more agreeable than men, and sometimes that can have an impact on their salary.
Yes.
Not just at the executive level, but through all, all rungs of the ladder, if you will. Talk to us a little bit about, and again, this is one of those moments where I've got Robin Pinkley, PhD, in front of me, and I've got two daughters that are going off to college that will one day enter the workforce.
Yes.
So to the female out there that is going to be negotiating a salary or a pay package that now, as you said, has these gifts to properly mesh that with the assertiveness, what advice would you give? And it doesn't have to be just to the females out there, to both sides. If you're going to negotiate that first contract or job, some steps to take to make sure that you do have the greatest outcome on that.
Okay, so that's a really interesting question, and it's one that I've become obsessed about. Now, let me tell you a little bit about where I came from on this. For years and years and years, from the beginning of my career, my female colleagues have asked me to do gender research, and until the last 5 years, I refused to do it. I refused to do it because I personally am an extremely assertive human being. I haven't consciously suffered from some of the same issues some of my other female colleagues and other women in the world have experienced, or not consciously. I look back and I realize I probably have. I just ignored it. And my concern was, if we focused on gender, two issues would occur. One was we'd exacerbate the saliency of gender differences. And secondly, we would limit people to one dimension that defines them, gender. When I, Robin Pinkley, am not just my gender. I'm my gender, I'm my age, I'm my socioeconomic background, I'm my political persuasion, I'm my cultural background, I'm my height, I'm so many things. And to limit us to one dimension is to exacerbate the fact that that is a definitive feature. Okay. Well, 5 years ago, I got tired of seeing how much literature there was on gender differences and how much definitive data there was on how women were not receiving the same salaries as men, particularly minority women, and particularly the literature on backlash and how much backlash women were getting for being assertive. So I had to do something. Because I have a daughter and a son, raised my children the same way. They're clearly very different. I mean, I thought I raised them the same way, but my daughter and my son are completely different. There is something about gender Let's face it. I mean, geez, I tried.
Right.
But they're very different. But they also both, neither of them are sexist. Neither of them see color. That's just not true. I mean, we all see these things, but they're both, extremely big-hearted, open, non-judgmental
Right.
human beings. But I had to do something about it. I just got angry about it, to be perfectly honest. So I am now obsessively doing research on gender differences, and I'm doing something with a focus on fixing it, and also determining the extent to which these things are reality versus myths. So let me preface this by saying the following. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can, in one generation, change the salary pay gap. One generation. But I also want to say that everything I'm going to say is equally beneficial for men and women. Equally beneficial for men and women. Equally beneficial for men and women. So every single piece of advice I would give to women, I would give to men. Okay? Now, the recent research we've done, it tells us a number of things. One is that the work that was done in the past on backlash was biased work. The work that was done on backlash operationalized assertive behavior in a way that was inaccurate. They actually were using aggressive behavior and labeling it assertive. And they were actually taking what was assertive behavior and labeling it passive.
So let me make sure I understand that. So is this for men and women or predominantly?
Men and women.
Okay, so basically, if I'm aggressive, that's, in other words,
Aggressive. What they did was they took, they used scenarios that now when we show it to the world, everybody says that's assertive behavior. Either when we give them the label of the dictionary description of assertiveness, or we don't. When we ask them what kind of behavior this is in negotiation, they tell us it's aggressive, but the researchers labeled it as assertive, but it's not. It was aggressive.
okay. Now let me ask you this, and you may get to this, so forgive me. Was it more often? And this is just me again, the layperson, and kind of looking out, going, I would be willing to venture a guess that more men were labeled assertive and more women got tagged as aggressive if the behaviors were, all things being equal, the same, or was it pretty equally distributed between the sexes?
In the literature, and this research was done like 10 years ago. Okay. What they didn't ask, what they did was they said it was a male or a female. And what they described it as assertive behavior, but it was actually aggressive behavior, and women were penalized more for it than men. Okay. Then they took what they described as passive behavior, but it was actually assertive behavior. Okay, and they didn't see a difference. Now, let me tell you, we redid the research, and what we looked at was actual, real aggressive behavior, assertive behavior, and passive behavior. And this is what we found. Okay, and with people labeling it accurately, and people telling us whether it was aggressive, assertive, or passive, and we found in the 10 years changes. First of all, what we found was assertive behavior for men and women is the sweet spot. Both men and women got better outcomes with assertive behavior, and were perceived very positively with assertive behavior. No difference. Passive behavior, men and women did poorly in terms of their negotiated outcomes, but were perceived positively.
Okay.
Aggressive behavior, men and women were penalized, both in terms of their negotiated outcomes and in terms of liking, but men were penalized more.
Really?
And our
That's surprising.
attribution about it is we now see lots of changes due to lots of examples in the press of very aggressive men, bullying men, and the world is tired of it.
Yeah.
So the feedback we're giving is completely damaging to women, because what we're saying to women in the press is, if you are assertive, you get backlash. Instead, what we should be saying to women is, you should be assertive. And what we should be saying is, men, when you're aggressive, you get backlash.
Right.
So we are giving people the wrong message, because new research we're starting to do says all the stuff on backlash that women are hearing in the press is decreasing their willingness to be assertive.
Yeah.
So we are creating the problems we were out to get rid of.
Right. Right.
I call it the backlash boomerang effect.
Yeah.
Now, that's the first thing. The second thing is we're discovering that for women, when we do training and negotiation, all we have to do is give men the skills and they go use them. Mm-hmm. What we find is for women, if we just give them the skills, they don't go use them. We also have to tell them it is normative to use these skills. You're going to be perceived better. And these skills will translate into both better objective outcomes like dollars and subjective outcomes liking. If we tell them those things, then they use them.
Really?
So men are used to negotiating. They're used to seeing these things as valid. They're used to seeing these things as okay. Women aren't. So we have to train them differently. Now, what I'm going around talking about a lot is this. You know, we must as women be assertive. I am, and I have achieved a lot. A lot. And I'm mostly liked by a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because I'm not unidimensional. And we women aren't unidimensional. We are multidimensional.
Right.
You're not just evaluated by being nice.
Right. Right.
You're evaluated based on lots of dimensions.
Yeah.
Nice and assertive. People are promoted for confidence, not for competence.
Right.
And the only way you show confidence is by being assertive as well as by being kind and uplifting other people. You know, I always give the example of, you know, to make lemonade, you certainly need sugar, but you also need lemons and willingness to stir the pot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is true for us women. You cannot be a boss, if you're not willing to be constructively bossy.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to get women today, right now, this moment, to agree to be assertive, to teach their children, females and males, to be both nice and gracious at the same time.
Yeah.
And to understand that in life, it takes both.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be beaten up and put down by others, you have to be assertive.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be put in jail, you have to be nice.
Right.
And we need the combination. We can change the pay gap in one generation. If you wait for the world to change, let me tell you, it is going to take generations. They say it's going to take generations for companies to decide to give equal pay. But if we all go out and negotiate for equal pay, and we do our homework and find out what the norms are and to negotiate for those norms, guess what? If we all do that, we will change the world, and we'll do it in one generation.
Well, and I think, it speaks exactly to what you said from a macro to a micro level of taking the individual. Know the market that you're
Exactly.
operating in, know your strengths, know your weaknesses.
That's it.
And go in with that in mind. And I love, and really, you reinforce something that my wife, who, like I told you before, whenever we were offline, who I'm terribly proud of, is a business owner herself. And what you just said, confidence, not competence, is what gets you promoted. I cannot tell you how many times she tells her sales associates, if you don't know something, at least look confident, because the first time you show a customer that you don't know what in the world you're talking about, you lose them. They're never going to trust your opinion on anything else that you're going to buy in her store. And I think that that's something that confidence is okay. Arrogance and cockiness and, as you said,
not okay.
aggression is not.
Correct.
And also I would like to believe, because I know the people that I've dealt with the most, the ones that are willing to be assertive, first of all, that it takes confidence to be assertive.
Correct.
But it also offers transparency.
Exactly.
And I know where you stand.
Transparency.
And it's one of the things that I learned early on in the political world, being a city councilman in Tyler. I could have I could go back and forth with constituents. And if I started the conversation with, we are not going to agree on this, and that's okay.
Exactly.
Instead of
You're
sitting
not
there,
personalizing it.
no,
See, it goes back to that thing
Yeah.
we said earlier.
Yeah.
You're not personalizing.
right. And so often
And-
that's
yeah.
because we think we want to immediately say, okay, what does this person want to hear?
Yeah.
And if you start from that standpoint, first of all, I would imagine you run the risk of falling into that passive category.
Exactly.
Instead of just saying, no, I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about writing.
Yeah.
Because now, did you decide, okay, I need to start writing, and I want to talk about your past writings, which
Yeah.
there are a ton of, both from a clinical standpoint to your books, but now you've got one coming up. So
Yeah.
take it from the first into where you're headed.
Yeah. So, I mean, as an academic, first of all, I mean, you don't get tenure and you don't get full professor and you don't get chair professor unless you're a prolific researcher.
Right.
Plus, to be perfectly honest, I could probably give up everything else but research. It's my passion. I love it. It's all about discovery. It's all about learning. It's all about discovering. I've criticized in recent papers. I've criticized my past research. I mean, I always say it's not about getting you to accept my truth. It's about discovering the truth, and that I'm really, really, really passionate about.
Wow.
And so. Writing is simply an extension of doing that research. And if I'm going to benefit from the work of others, I have to be willing to share my work. So that's the first thing. The work the book I did with my co-author Greg Northcraft on negotiating salary and compensation was because we noticed that, when did our students really stand up and take notice? Well, it was about salary negotiations, because there's no negotiation you ever do that affects your life as much as your salary negotiations.
Right.
And again, given the topics we've been discussing, it's something I have really gotten passionate about, and I need to write a book specifically for women about really getting them to understand the importance of going and doing your homework and gathering the data and preparing for those negotiations and feeling assertive about those negotiations. Because we were talking about confidence, but in truth, I have conviction because I do my homework, because I have something to have conviction about. For me, it has to be authentic, and I think for most women, it has to be authentic. So you have to have things that you feel authentic about. But what you're getting at is I'm about to write 2 books. One is I have a very unique approach to negotiation. I call it the gain-gain approach to strategic negotiation or profitable negotiation,
Right.
because it is profitable as well as strategic. And it's very different than win-win, and it's too long for this podcast to explain the difference, but it's very different. And the reason is I've discovered that win-win is a misnomer. People don't really understand what they mean.
Right.
When you ask people how do they know they have a win-win, what they tell you is happy, happy.
Right.
And when you really delve into then how are they tracking happy, happy, it opens them up to such manipulation on the part of the other side. If happy, happy is my goal, then I'm just going to wait until you're happy.
Right.
And in addition, I'm happy as soon as I hit my bottom line. So it's win-win. The intention of win-win is a good one, but strategically it translates into really, really poor strategies, and it leads to a total misunderstanding of the objective of negotiation. So, so I'm going to write a book that really encompasses my clarity about what the objective is of negotiation and all the strategies that really lead to the understanding that your objective should lead to your strategies. Because what I find, there has not been one corporate or government customer I've ever had who had clarity about what the objective was in negotiation. And because strategies stem from that, what they end up doing is they don't know what their objective is, then they don't meet their objective. And because they don't meet their objective, their strategies end up changing, and then their objectives end up changing.
Right.
And it's a mess.
Yeah.
So that's a book. But the book I'm really excited about writing, that we're going to start working on in August, is, and I don't know exactly what the title is going to be yet, and I'm sure my co-author will have a much better idea, but something like, you can't be a bossy unless you're willing to be bossy. The bossiness rules. And that is some of the things that we've alluded to and talked a little bit about already in this podcast. And it's about, the fact that women aren't unidimensional, they're multidimensional, and that we as women, who, by the way, are the majority in this world, can, in one generation, change our context if we decide we want to, if we decide that we want to unify, if we decide we want to do our homework, if we decide we want to use the strategies that are effective in every aspect of our lives, in our professional lives, in our personal lives, if we decide we want to figure out how to apply the tenets of effective negotiation to every aspect of what we are, who we are, how we manage our bosses, our peers, our direct reports, how we manage our businesses, how we manage our vendors, our suppliers, how we manage our spouses, our significant others, how we manage our children, how we raise our children, how we manage our elderly parents, how we manage our romantic relationships, how we pick those romantic relationships, which, by the way, are really, really important. If we choose to do that in an effective manner, we can change our lives and we can change the world. And I'm going to be writing it with Christine Allison, who, as you know, is the CEO of D Partners,
Right.
who I've known for years and who I have immense respect for, who has written numerous books on her own, and who is so tied into the publishing world and agents, et cetera, and who is a brilliant writer and a brilliant thinker, and who is on the same page with me on this, and who I just frankly look forward to having time with because I enjoy her so much. And beyond that, we both have daughters who we are so profoundly proud of, and who are living the tenets of these issues we're talking about, and who aren't just living it, but who have taught us some of it. It hasn't been a unidirectional learning process.
Right.
We haven't just taught them some of these things, they've taught us. And now I have a little 8-month-old granddaughter who is making me even more joyful about this topic.
Yeah.
And my son, who is my consigliere, who is probably pushed me more in thinking about the importance of writing this than anyone else, and is my biggest advocate. So I'm very, very, very excited about writing this with her.
Well, and I think it's an important topic at an important time, and also just for the listeners out there, if you have not listened to my podcast interview with Jilly Allison, now her mom's the CEO and she's the president of D Magazine Group, and it is a great interview. Jilly is very impressive, and I thoroughly enjoyed that visit. So go check that out.
And my daughter Erin Ness, who is a manager and in charge of the rollout of the whole new Slurpee campaign at 7-Eleven.
There you go. See, great women doing great things. And I think that, one of the things, like I've mentioned before, having two daughters. And
I should say Erin Ness Kathy, now that she's married.
There
yes.
you go. There you go. It is important. And one of the things that what I'm hearing you say is that if you can convince, and this is, I guess, with regard to any topic, to any individual you're trying to help to march forward toward a goal, is that get rid of the outside noise. Because like what you mentioned earlier, what we hear now a lot of in the media, and maybe I'm surmising this ineffectively, but I think to your point, you hear of the stories of a bunch of aggressive men that were matched with either passive or maybe just assertive women, and therefore there was a dominating effect, and that's all we hear. So therefore, if you send, like if my daughters go into interview with the mindset that, well, I'm already behind the 8 ball because I'm a female and I'm going to get mistreated, so I'm going to be on defense, as opposed to coming and visiting with Dr. Pinkley and hearing the message of, wait a minute, do your homework like you would on any other, just cast all that out, make this your market, you're going to own it because the principles will be effective for you regardless of gender, but you have to do it. Kind of like what it goes back to you telling the students when you go out there into the workforce. Here, we've told you the things to do, and by the way, if you do them, you will reap the benefits. But you got to do those things. Am I getting it?
You're definitely getting it, and you know, again, it's a combination of, you know, first of all, recognizing if you're comfortable with assertive, you don't shift into one of two things, aggressive or passive. And when you're not comfortable with assertive, people tend to get triggered and shift into one of those other two, and neither of those are effective, as I've told you.
Yeah.
Men and women.
Right.
And it's a combination of, you know, having done your homework, going in with numbers, going in with an explanation about the whys behind the whats, and empathizing with the other side's limitations, saying, you know, I understand you may have limitations. Let's talk about what those limitations are. If there are limitations, what else can we do? Right. So it's a combination of asserting what you want, but also recognizing what they can and cannot do, but not giving up and searching for other opportunities to still pursue what it is you're after. So it's really that combination of, as I said, I on your side, you're on their side.
Right.
And the combination of assertiveness with empathy and understanding.
Right. Well, that's a lot about the technical aspects of the academic work, as well as the academic and research and teaching that you brought into the private sector. Whenever you're not writing, speaking, consulting, starting businesses, what are you doing?
Not much else.
I don't know where you'd find time.
Because as you mentioned, I've started a business. I mean,
yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, so I've had the great fortune of having one of my star executive MBA students, Catherine Jarvis, who's also happens to be an MD, approached me a little less than a year ago about a startup, what we're calling the newest to market high-tech healthcare company, BedBeacon. And she asked me to be the chief strategic officer of that company. And we are launching it now as we speak. I can't talk a lot about it because we are launching it, but I will say that it is a incredible product that will increase greatly the efficiency and profitability of hospitals. And it's a platform that helps them to link with long-term care facilities and ease the process of discharge and move those patients more effectively and efficiently into long-term care facilities. And beyond that, we hope to help the United States and then the world with disaster relief efforts, which is, I think, a wonderful, wonderful thing. So this company is equally concerned with the welfare of the healthcare industry and mechanisms for increasing its viability as well as profitability. And every single person who's associated with it has those two double concerns and interests, and it's what we look for in our employees and what we look for in our partners. And it's really exciting because as Chief Strategic Officer, it allows me to do all those things I talked about that I'm doing with my customers, and it's really, really exciting. Beyond that, I'm extremely committed to my family. I'm very lucky to have an extended family that I adore. You know, I've said that I feel like this age is I'm the happiest I've ever been. Yeah. I have family that feel like friends, and I have friends that feel like family. I have such an extensive network. You know, I tell my students all the time, you don't understand the value of your networks. And it's really, really true. And when you have family that you love enough and who you not only support, but support you so much that they're your friends, you are so fortunate.
Yeah.
And when you have a worldwide network of friends who you've known for so long and you know will drop anything and be here for you like family, you are so fortunate. And so beyond your work, investing in the people you care about is golden.
Yeah. Amen.
And I am extremely fortunate to have that. Beyond that, you can look around here and see I have a little nest.
Yeah.
I love to decorate.
Well, but it's everything's in its proper order. I mean, it's
Yeah, well,
it's kind of a minimalist but yet very chic approach. I love it.
I'm
My
kind of a
wife
neat
would
freak.
adore this place.
Well, I'm kind of a neat freak. When you do as much work as I do, I need a little nest where I can chill and reflect and feel calm. And at the end of every day, I sit on my patio and enjoy the view of the city and the view of the pool. And it's kind of my respite at the end of the day. And it helps me to reflect on my day and kind of organize all of my thoughts and feel gratitude.
Yeah.
I think I start every single day with a huge amount of gratitude for all the things I have in my life. And I most certainly end my day in the same way.
Wow. That's fantastic. And I know that's one of the things that many experts in the coaching area will tell you, that if you can learn to exercise gratitude, and it kind of brings up something else that I like to talk about and tease out, routines, and that's one of them. So do you have a formal meditation practice that you do and a routine that you go through? Talk to us about that.
I don't think I'm very good at meditation.
It's hard.
People keep telling me, all of my friends tell me, Robin, you'd benefit so much from meditation.
Yeah.
And I haven't tried it. They're probably right. I'm sure I would benefit greatly from meditation, and maybe that will happen in the next phase of my life.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen in this phase. But yes, I think routine and I think discipline is extremely important. I work mostly from my home office because I'm doing so many things.
Right.
I think working in my SMU office would not be fair because I spend so much time on the phone, on Zoom, on Skype, that I would be noisy.
Right.
And I also, when I'm not on the phone and when I'm not in front of people, I need focused attention on my work. And people coming in and out of your office, and I can't focus. So I work from my home office. So I have a very clear routine. Yeah. I get up in the morning. I make myself do some exercise. I have the best latte machine in the planet.
Oh, so I'm a coffee man.
I have to have my latte. Yeah. So, for 1 week, my latte machine was broken, and I literally was depressed.
Yeah. No,
I mean, honestly.
I get it.
Honestly.
We're the same way.
And I have a very specific way of making it. I double foam it. I'm a foam person.
Yeah.
So I double foam it and make my incredible latte.
Well, tell me about your beans. What beans do you buy? Because I'm a snob about very few things, but I am a coffee snob. So tell me what beans.
I think it's Cafe Express.
Okay.
I go buy their beans.
Okay.
I love, they have flavored beans, and I love flavored beans.
Okay.
So I combine it with espresso beans.
Okay, nice.
And
so you like the strong stuff. So I like it to make my toes curl. I mean, I like really strong.
See, I'm not that.
Yeah, so I'm all espresso.
I'm not that. No. That would probably, I'm a hyper enough person as it is. I think I would drive everybody in my life crazy if I did that. So I do that, and then as I'm making that, I turn back up the air conditioning because I like it really cold at night. I mean, this is a pattern. I turn on my computer.
Yeah.
Okay. This is
I
what
love
I do.
it. This is what I
and
want
then after I finish making my latte, I go sit on my patio. I reflect on what I need to do during the day. I have gratitude, and then I go through and delete things that I don't need to deal with on my email.
Nice.
Then as soon as that's done, I go to my computer, and I'm literally at my computer from the first thing in the morning and doing phone calls and Zoom and Skype probably till about 9 o'clock at night. I am terrible about eating during the day.
Really?
I almost never, ever, ever eat during the day. I'm terrible about it. And then whenever my day ends, then I come and make dinner. And it's usually microwave. And then I will watch one show, then I read, so I can separate my brain from whatever my work is, unless I have a dinner to go to, or I'm meeting friends for cocktails or whatever.
Are you reading fiction or nonfiction during
I
the time?
do both.
Okay. What? Give me some of your favorite reads.
I read everything. Historic fiction is probably my favorite.
Okay.
I love historic fiction.
I do too.
And
I like
I love
Michener's stuff.
historic. I love real history too.
Yep.
I read fiction. I mean, I read sci-fi. I read fantasy sci-fi.
Okay.
I mean, I read everything.
Okay.
I read spy novels. I mean, I read everything.
Yeah.
I can never tell you the name of the author. I can never tell you the name
Same
of the
here.
book because I read so much.
Yeah.
The only way I can get my mind off my work and not dream about it all night long and shut my brain down is to read at night. So I have a Kindle. I put it on the darkest thing I can, and I read for, depending on, I fall asleep to my book and then put it away and go to sleep.
Wow.
That's my day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do spend, significant time with friends too. So I, am out several times a week.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, it sounds like a very rich life.
It is one, there's a movie, though it's a Wonderful Life. Let me tell you, I am in my 60s, early 60s. I don't think I've ever been so joyful. I don't think I've ever been so integrated.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever lived life to its fullest as much as I am now. I wouldn't change a thing. I am grateful for everything I have. I'm getting to do all the work that I want to do.
Yeah.
My children are in a great place. I am eternally grateful. I know this is not an equal playing field.
Yeah.
Most people have to work.
Yeah.
I get to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's not like I haven't had tragedies in my life. I have. It's not like I haven't had heartache in my life. I have. But I've learned from every single thing that's occurred. And now is, a time when I get to benefit from all that learning. And I hope I never stop.
Well, and that brings up something that, I talk a lot about. Like I do some lecturing to undergrads and a lot of mentoring. They're just starting out. And one of the things I'm fascinated, because I'm kind of, at the proverbial midpoint, I'm 44, and I'm glad you mentioned you're in your 60s. We live in my opinion, like we talked about before we came on air, I think we live in the most remarkable, fascinating, exciting time ever to be. This is the greatest time to be a human being ever, especially if you're in the United States of America with all of our issues and division, all that. It's there, but what an exciting time. And there's no reason if you're in your 60s to slow down. There's so much to do. Oh my gosh, yeah. And you're proving that.
Yes.
If you're 25, there's no reason for you to go out there and tackle things that, heretofore maybe a 25-year-old wouldn't have. And then Chip Conley, who is a very successful hotelier. He's famous. He built a lot of boutique hotels, made a ton of money, became one of the early stage investors and advisors for Airbnb. He has actually started a research institute. And it's kind of like an MBA for midlifers.
Wow.
Because first of all, we're living longer.
That's right.
There's more education at our fingertips that people are able to continue to deploy. And I think you're proving that. And so I just want, for the listener out there that is, 40s, 50s, 60s, right here, Dr. Robin Pinkley said it and is a living example. There is still a lot of work to be done. Yeah. And you're doing it. So I think that's fantastic.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, keep crushing it. And I got to ask you one question that I ask all of my guests. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Covey does the exercise where you find yourself at your own funeral, and that's where he says, close the book and truly think about what you want said about you when it's all said and done. So I know what I would say about you, but I want to know what you would want said about Dr. Robin Pinkley when it's all said and done.
I kind of have 2 answers to that. The one, you're not going to like the first one, so I'll give you the one you want. But the first one I would say is whatever people want to say about me.
I think that's perfect.
Seriously, because I think you leave people with what they take away. I think it's their right to have had that experience with you, not yours to give it to them. And I would want people to authentically say that. I would not presume to give that to them. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely. I think that's a remarkable answer.
And I, to be honest, I think I've been lucky enough to have, particularly my children, already tell me a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how grateful I am for that.
Yeah.
My children are remarkable people. I am so grateful for them. And they haven't left things unsaid, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
But I would want people to say what they would want to say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't presume to say it for them.
Well, I can tell you that, and again, for the listener, you go through graduate school was grueling, and for me, emotional. It was an emotional beatdown. It was awful. It was the
so
best.
sorry.
It was the best of times and the worst of times.
That's one of my favorite.
It
Tale
truly
of Two
was.
Cities. I use that quote so often.
It really was. That's the best way I can describe it. But Robin, you were definitely a bright point, not only for who you are as a person, but the knowledge attained. I mean,
Thank you.
I use it on a daily basis, and I cannot thank you enough from the bottom of my heart with me starting this little project, you being one of my early guests, which, it's just, I'm so grateful. So thank you so much for taking this time with me. I think we did pretty well.
I do too. And I since I get an opportunity to say this, I'm going to say it myself. I am so profoundly proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm not the least bit surprised to find that you have figured out what you want to do with your life.
Oh, thank you.
I have every expectation that not only will you be successful at this, but that this will lead to many more things for you.
Wow.
So thank you, because, few people get to have the opportunity to work with people and then see them flourish. And it is one of the joys of what I do. So thank you, myself. And thank you for this time together.
Thanks, Robin. I appreciate you. Hey, folks, thanks so much for listening to the Texas Titans podcast. I got one thing to ask you. If you would, please follow me on Instagram at Jason Wright Now. I'm trying to build up my Instagram following because that's where I like to communicate. That's the social media platform I'm most comfortable with. But if Facebook is your game, go to Jason Wright TX. That's where I'll interact with you there. Also on Twitter, I'm at Jason Wright TX. Please give me a follow there. I'm trying to get better with Twitter. I'm trying. So please give me a follow there. And also always go out to jasonwrightnow.com, which is my personal site where you can access both the blog as well as the podcast. Or you can just go directly to the podcast site, which is textitans.blog. Titans.blog. You can read the bios on all of our guests, and you can access all the previous shows right there in one place, textitans.blog. Thank you so much for listening. Go out and crush it.